It's Tri-City Sports Now, and we usually end up the week with Josh Brown of Knockahoma Nation, and we rejoice when we do because we get to talk about baseball, and we look forward to the games. Of course, the big series now, and you've mentioned this being a Georgia native, that the whole perception of Reds-Braves got to be a little bit different than what it is in the Tri-Cities, where Reds and Braves, that's the local rivalry. I mean, we get either Braves games or Reds games on TV here in the Tri-Cities, and sometimes lately it seems more Reds games. And I think that goes even before when we were talking about the old Milwaukee Braves. Yeah, when the Braves were either in Milwaukee or Boston prior to 1966, there's a lot of, old loyalties, not only to the senior class, but that have been passed down to a younger generation as well. Back in the times when the Reds won during the Big Red Machine, and maybe the Braves, well, yeah, they did lose in the 70s, let's face it, and all that. So another, more of a middle-aged generation also might have been rooting for the Reds around here. But that rivalry, you say, really doesn't have anything going with, say, the Georgia or the South Carolina-based Braves fans, or maybe the Chattanooga, I don't know, a double-A team of the Reds is in Chattanooga, so maybe I speak too soon. Let's just say the South Carolina and the Alabama and the Georgia Braves fan. That doesn't really have that connection, Reds or Braves, does it? We've talked about that before. So this series doesn't mean that much to you, does it?
Not in regards to a rivalry. No, there's not, being a Georgia boy, you don't really think of the Reds as being a rival per se, but honestly, I've got, as a baseball fan, I have some respect for the Reds, and I think it's great that the Reds got Trevor Bauer. I think that they've got a fantastic pitching staff. I really think that. And I think it's good for baseball when the Reds are competitive. I do. It's such a great baseball town. It's a great park. Such fantastic history. It's the oldest franchise, I think, right?
It's where pro baseball started, but the Reds franchise actually, for National League purposes, 1890. The Boston Braves and the Cubs actually started the same, in 1876. But yeah, the Cubs, of course, like to say that ours is unbroken. We haven't moved. And they've got a legitimate argument there because, let's face it, you didn't know about Hurricane Hazel. So, we're talking to Josh Brown of Knockahoma Nation, and let's talk a little bit more about the contemporary. This 4-game series right now. I guess if the Reds do well, maybe they could get back into the race. But right now, I really do feel, and I don't mean to sound all fat and happy, but I'm looking at stats that say if you're in first place in the wild card era on August 1st, you have a 72% chance, if history repeats itself, of winning the division. I see the Phillies spinning their wheels. I see the Nationals. Okay, Soto's good, but, it seems like they had their chance to make their move here this week, and they didn't. The Mets are winning, but they're just too far out. Give me a nightmare scenario in which the Braves don't win the division. Does everybody get hurt? Do mind lasers come from China and cause all the peach trees to wilt? What happens?
I haven't thought about the peach tree
wilting. Yeah,
but that's very likely.
Yeah.
I think it's theirs to lose for sure. Baseball's weird, as we know, and there's still a lot of baseball left, and 6.5 is comfortable, but weird things do happen. And so I think if something did happen, Marky, I think it's pitching. I think pitching is just so volatile sometimes, and maybe it could teeter here or there. But I think it's theirs to win, theirs to lose for sure. The Nationals are good. I do think that they're still a formidable team. I'll agree with you with the Phillies. I think they're just a lost cause, and I think that the Mets are done as well. And I got to give a little credit to the Mets because the Mets got dragged on Twitter all week by people that I respect, baseball writers, media members. But I got to tell you, they gave up 2 okay pitching prospects for Marcus Stroman, and everybody's like, well, why did they do that? And I think the short answer is, they got offered Marcus Stroman for 2 guys that are okay. One guy was a first-round draft pick, which is great, and then another guy was a highly touted prospect in their system, but they're not good, and they're not doing very good this year. And so I don't know. I'm no Mets lover at all, as you know, but I think they got dragged all week because of it. I'm like, they just got Stroman. Stroman comes out and says he was a Mets fan growing up, and I mean, good for them.
Well, the one thing I can say about the Mets is that they're 4 out of the last wild card, 4 or 4.5, and that's not for 2 months. You can do that. And especially if you're catching a second-place team, not a first-place team. A second-place team's going to lose more. So you can look at that. I mean, I'm a critic of Mickey Callaway, obviously. I mean, you're going after reporters for saying, see you tomorrow. I mean, that's insanity. You've lost it. You're just like David Bell. But the situation, I think, is that the Mets management thinks of him as a puppet, which may be the modern-day manager. We can discuss that or so. But anyway, and it could be doable. It could be. I know the Mets had a lot of high hopes start of the year. So could a wild card salvage that? And then, when you look at like Alfonso at first base and all this in the future, and Stroman coming back next year, I mean, I think that you could look at a legitimate pennant race with the young Braves and also the formidable Mets. I mean, yes, I do think so. Yes, so I agree with you. In fact, I think the Mets did make themselves. Hey, don't forget about us. We won a pennant 4 years ago. Don't forget about us.
Yeah, and if they went out and traded 4 guys, you know what I mean, like 4 highly touted prospects, and along with an MLB-ready arm or something, 4 Stroman, then you drag them. But everybody was just dragging him for this. I mean, it was ridiculous. So
well, I would drag Major League Baseball for allowing a team 10.5 out of first place on August 2nd to really start thinking, we could win the World Series. It could be Mets-Yankees this year. I mean, if we can get that last wild card and start Stroman in the wild card, who knows?
Yeah.
So I will say that. Why did we play 162? I mean, but anyway, we're talking to Josh Brown, Knockahoma Nation. I do want to talk a little bit more about these deals that the Braves have made. The first one really made with the Rangers, and I remember when that went down, and I said, you know what? I think Chris Martin could be the closer of the Braves. Well, that was speaking a little too soon, but they gave up lefty Colby Allard. 4 years ago, he was the first-round pick of the Braves. He did have a 4.17 ERA in Gwinnett. And I don't know. I mean, I was hearing, the Braves kind of think he's the guy that will win 5-4, 6-5 games and not 2-1 or 3-2 games, that sort of thing. What was your thought? I mean, you were losing a guy who was a first-round draft choice for someone who's thrown, less than 50 innings this year. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I thought that part of it's a little sad just because I like Colby Allard. I got to watch him in Rome, and he had a ton of promise. Early on, he was a savage, and we thought this guy's going to be a top-of-the-rotation guy, and he's just not. And almost any scout will tell you that. He lost velocity. I remember talking about it on the podcast about a year ago, and I got a lot of hate for it because people thought that he was doing it on purpose. A lot of times a pitcher will kind of intentionally back off a little bit in the minors to save their arm in the majors. Well, I didn't think Colby was doing that. I think he really lost a couple of ticks. He was topping out about 88, 89, and that just wasn't going to play. And, he just hasn't done well. And so if you're a Braves fan, you love Colby Allard in 2016 and 2017, but I mean, you're just not in love with him anymore. It is what it is. So I thought the Braves got a great return for sure. Chris Martin has walked 1 batter since April.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. It's great. If you're the Braves and your biggest problem is walking guys, late in games, which they do.
Yeah, Sean Newcomb. Yeah. I think about that. You're going now from, I hope, we can't throw that intentional walk for the bases loaded to go to the next hitter. Newcomb might walk him home. Now you have Martin, and I know it's lefty-righty, so it might be a different situation there and such, but there's less of that. There is more option when you have a good control pitcher like that. John Ryan Murphy, what do you think his role is with the Braves, the backup catcher they got from the D-backs?
Yeah, it was one of the things where, let's be honest, Tyler Flowers has really underperformed. Behind the plate and at the plate, with the bat in his hand. And I hate to say it because, the guy's been such a all that. But, I mean, he's got, last I looked, it was like 15 or 16 pass balls, you know? And on top of that, if you watch him and Keuchel the other night, he just has a really hard time calling a game, in my opinion. He's not a good game caller. I don't know if that's a new thing or if that's kind of always been there. And so I think the Braves, you know, needed somebody in case Tyler Flowers continues to be bad or he gets hurt, right? Because the next answer is either Alex Jackson, and is he really ready? The Braves don't really know yet. And then Contreras, which he's not ready for another year or two.
I'll tell you,
They just needed a backup guy.
I mean, you mentioned Flowers' pitch framing. That's very important. That might be the most important defensive aspect of a catcher when you see some of the new modern analytics about that. But, I mean, I can show you, you know, difference in ERAs for catchers, you know, even, say, half a run difference based on calling games and all that.
It's overrated, overblown. I really think that. I think a lot of guys, I think the whole catch framing thing
Really?
has been so overblown. I really do.
Okay, because, I mean, the Pirate fan in me remembers when Ryan Doman, who was the worst pitch framer in the league, was back there, and then how they made the playoffs with Russell Martin, who was one of the best. And that was actually one of the reasons given. So, I mean, I'm a little surprised with that. But, yeah, I do think that the defensive catcher, who you're comfortable throwing to, talk to the old Braves fan again who saw the Ted Simmons, who never thought he'd catch again with his knees. And, you know, in the losing days, can you help develop Zane Smith? Yes, I will go back behind the plate once every 5 days for Zane Smith. And it worked beautifully. They won 15 games that year. I mean, you know, it's things like that.
I guess I'm probably exaggerating to clarify, I guess, in that regard, but I think often a lot of young catchers just obsess too much over framing that they forget their other tools, and that's why you see guys hitting 220, but they can frame, so they have a job. I just think that hitting and calling games supersedes framing, but I could be wrong.
I need a name with no explanation here. That's the time I have left. Shane Green, blue 9 saves for the Tigers. Melancon has been injury prone, although his curveball is said to be doing real well the last 2 years, and his ERA is .350, which is, who's the closer? Melanson. There you go. And they talked about Shane Green. Well, he waived his no-trade contract for a reason, didn't he, and all that. The Atlanta Braves, I think they're one of the 4 best teams in baseball. Can they be number 1? We'll know in about 3 months or so. We'll see you on Monday. Tri-City Sports Now.